How's it going, YouTube? Come back to today's another video, and today, guys, what the brain do is going to be Season 2, Episode 6 of the podcast. Today, we're going to be talking about the state of the game. You've probably already met everyone from the other episodes, but, these are all very good friends of mine. If you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, for anyone who may not know you, go ahead and do so.
What's up, y'all? I'm Evilise. You can find me as Evilise on Twitter and Twitch. Super happy to be here as always.
Hi there, I'm Roarkallos. You can find me on twitch.tv/Roarkallos, and you can find me weeping about tier element ban list.
Hi everyone, my name is Galzo. You can find me over on YouTube at Galzo and Twitter at GalzoTCG.
Thank you all so much for joining me again. This is the crew that you'll be seeing in the podcast. This is just the one that I want. Just everyone here, I really do enjoy your company and all the conversations we have. I feel like it always gets to be very productive. And so we're going to hop into another very productive conversation today. Lots to talk about, especially with AGov coming up. If you haven't already checked out the sponsors on the channel over on Gem, Imperium, Dragon Shield, or Grimoire, definitely go ahead and do so, all down in the description below. And without further ado, let's hop right on into the first slide. The first thing I want to talk about is going to be the OCG ban list. Let's start with Rourke on this one.
Yeah, damn, that's cold. Once again, I have to live through another tier limit massacre. I think this is like the fifth or sixth one. This must be how Dryden feels like. Nah, honestly, like a lot of the changes are I think pretty justified. I know there's a lot of Chaos Ruler fans out there, but let's be real. The card probably should be banned. But then there's some weird things like limiting Block Dragon is okay, so we're acknowledging that it's a problem, but we don't want to do anything about it. This is the way I read that hit. But overall, I think I think that the ban list for this just kind of just says hey, we want you to stop playing tier. We want you to buy new decks, and yeah, it's just enough is enough, and I think that's fair. I think it's a little overboard. I think just banning Chaos Ruler is probably enough, as the TCG has shown. And I'm really sad to see Kelbeck banned, because Kelbeck is my favorite of the Ishizu cards. Before Kelbeck came out in the TCG and we were awaiting its release, I always called him my darling Kelbeck. So,
With this ban list, there's some random stuff that they finally addressed, like Rongo Miniad, no more Rongo Bongo finally, I guess, but that wasn't really that relevant, I guess. Hitting, I agree with Rourke that hitting Agito, Kelbeck, and Tier Cash, are just, you just need to take Chaos Ruler and you can just call it a day. You don't need to go that overboard, but I think they really want to drive the point home of do not play tier limit anymore. Do not come for this deck. And as with OCG lists doing as they will, there's a bunch of semi limits that I don't think really impact that much. The Delicious Memory to 2 is semi impactful because now you can't just immediately get to Delicious from my friend. The other stuff I don't think has that much of a bearing on the format. So it's a pretty tame list except for the tier hits, I think.
I think this just shows us first of all, I have to agree with everything that was said before, because I think hitting Chaos Ruler was enough. There wasn't any reason to go beyond that, probably, unless that reason is stop playing that deck completely. Enough is enough. Stop. Which definitely makes sense. It's been a long ass time. It's 7-8 formats. It's definitely enough. But it also shows the power of the Sinful Spoils engine, because that card, Diabellstar specifically, was a 1-card Chaos Ruler. And that just shows you how much powerful that engine is when you pair it up with decks like Tier Elements. It's super funny. Everything that was said before, Airlifter to 2, seems like a typo or something. It's super weird. It doesn't really make sense, but I get it. That they wanted to address it somehow. Because it is one of the, it's definitely one of the stronger decks right now, and that is also because of Diabellstar that just searches Fire Hydrant. So, and it's also too early to hit Diabellstar. Who knows? Maybe it's the main theme of the game now, so they don't want to do it too much damage. Rivalry to 2, sure, I guess. I mean, I'm happy for you guys. I want that too, but okay, we'll start. It's a good starting off point to something. And Floowandereeze map to 2 just reminded me, and I think we're probably going to talk about that in this episode, that this card should go to 1. This card was at 1 in the OCG. This card should be 1 in the TCG. And hopefully we'll talk about that. Meowmu to 3. Again, like, go nuts.
That's so scary.
Again tonight. I mean, yeah, bring that back here. I mean, it's totally free.
I would never want to see Meowmu over 0. Like, no, thank you. I don't want to go through that again. That was awful.
It's the old days, but I mean, I think it's fine.
Looking at the ban list just objectively, because I know that the second I woke up, it said 1 minute ago updated, and I was looking at it, and I was like, interesting. They just now banned Rango Miniad. And that's a card that I didn't even see in many lists that was a problem. Not saying that's not a problem, because that card's absurd. And if it was in the TCG right now, every deck would be trying to turbo that out. That is just a ridiculous card. I've always thought that card was really tame if you just ban like Gossip Shadow, but I'm pretty sure that's still banned over there. I could be wrong. That's something that was definitely very interesting. But seeing Rango, it just like it wasn't even doing anything in their format, so that was kind of random. It might be like at a local level, people were getting irritated with it, but like Tier, Diabellstar, like there's just so many other decks that were just a bigger issue, right? Chaotic Ruler actually had the same sentiment. That card needed to go. There's a card in the CCG that like we all understood why it went. We didn't really want to see it go because it's a very fun card, so we call it the very fun dragon. Beside like the actual very fun dragon, that card can also stay banned. I hate that card forever. But in general, the ban list was very interesting. Seeing Block Dragon to 1 is kind of like a slap in the face because it's like we're gonna deal with this problem. Well, that card being at 1 still is a massive problem and still very searchable. So I just think that that's always going to be an issue as well. Overall, I think that the OCG is probably going to change quite a bit after that ban list because there's just a lot that changed as far as like tier goes. A lot of the lists that I was seeing were still tier, but a lot of the format's still going to be the same. It's going to be Pearly and Rescue Ace. We did see a tier limit list already though. It was 3 deployment, 3 Cartasia, a bunch of dangers, and like Schism Turbo. So we'll have to see how that works out. Maybe we still see tier in the top cuts, but what that is yet to be seen. Any final thoughts on the OCG ban list?
If you're gonna top cut with tier in the OCG, come find me. Okay, I want to be your friend.
I mean, Dragonic Diagram to 2 is somewhat interesting. It's interesting that like so in the OCG they have Dragonic Diagram now at 2. They have full unlimited copies of Miscellaneousaurus. Like I think Oviraptor, like it was limited for it was semi-limited for a time. I don't think there's any other hits on it at that point. So it's like Dino has a lot of tools, strangely enough, and they have that new fusion monster that just places a field spell and grants you an extra normal of a Dino. It's kind of interesting, but it's still Dino, so who knows?
Yeah. Shout out to Don for that. I'm sure that he's excited for the Dino support coming. So we'll maybe one day, maybe one day. Are we excited for the new format?
So I am really excited for the new format, actually. I have been playtesting Agave, I don't know, whatever you want to call it. And it's like these cards are really cool. They're really strong, but and they kind of like there's some cards in particular really warp the way that the game is played. Originally Arias, I'll save talking about some of them for the colleagues here, but the one that I'm like most excited for like coming out in Agave is Arias, the Labyrinth Butler, because I think it is incredibly understated how good that card is. I have gone on record now to call it's essentially like getting a 4th tier limit fusion per turn. It's like imagine like if during like tier limit format they just printed a brand new tier limit girl that was like level 1 or something, and now you just have 4 fusions per turn. That's how it feels like to play with Arias, and its potential goes so far beyond just turn 0 trap cards. I think oftentimes people like look at it and they're like, oh, this card's gonna let my opponent like activate like a Karma Canyon turn 0 or like a D-Berry or something, or maybe just like a low impact hand trap or like get a pop out of it. Like, okay, so my combo deck can play through a hand trap, so like my combo deck could also play through the activation of a regular trap card too, right? And yeah, it probably can. Arias is not going to like stop your turn on its own. But what it does do is it starts getting your engine rolling as early as turn 0. And so even though like when we think about combo decks playing through hand traps, like playing through an Imperm or an Ash Blossom, if you get ashed and you can still combo, your opponent effectively -1 themselves. That's what we call hand looping yourself. But if you activate an Arias and you set a normal trap and you get your engine rolling and the combo player plays through that, you did not -1 yourself. You interrupted them and you got your engine rolling, and you'll be activating 2 more traps on turn 2 and 2 more traps on turn 3 and 2 more traps on turn 4, etc., etc. So it's a lot more resilient than just activating an Ash Blossom and watching your opponent do their same board anyway. So I highly encourage people to start testing out Labyrinth with the Butler, because it is not a card that reads very strong, but once you start playing with it, it's a bit of a power trip.
Yeah, I would echo that. Something that's interesting about kind of how cards are released in the OCG and TCG kind of vary greatly, especially with like cards that come out of the Animation Chronicles in the OCG. And one of the things about that is that the OCG had the card Transaction Rollback, which is basically the best piece of indirect support Labyrinth has ever received. They had that card a month before Arias the Labyrinth Butler came out. So that card and dominant builds of Labyrinth kind of homogenized around Rollback. And now, because we're not getting Rollback until January, we have an entire 3 months where like Arias can exist without Rollback. So we can see kind of more builds happening, which I think is really interesting. In terms of like the other cards from the set, there's a lot of like just engine stuff, which I'm sure y'all are pretty excited to talk about. Some of the Horus cards and some of the Diabellstar cards, but also like the extra deck monsters. I'm sure everyone's going wild about Little Knight, which absolutely, it's a very powerful card. But Stellar Nemesis Tifon Doomsday Star is kind of a card that I'm hugely excited about, especially for a deck like Labyrinth that basically if you went through your combo and you just kind of had a Ku Klok on your board that was just chilling there, and it wasn't able to like really do much except for like maybe go into an Anima if you play that in your extra. Now you have a Fiend monster in your extra deck that can just slap on top of it, serve as a 2900 body, and non-targeting bounce one of your opponent's monsters. That is a game changer, not just for Labyrinth, but for a lot of decks in breaking boards. And I think it's going to see quite a bit of play as it's seen in the OCG.
Yeah, when we talk about power creep, that card's kind of insane.
It's funny because we have a little less than a month till Age of Overlord. But I think, first of all, we have Dortmund coming up next weekend. That's going to be, I think that's going to be very interesting. I don't know how many YCSs we have after that until Age of Overlord releases. Maybe you guys have one of them in the States. I don't really remember. Or Dortmund is the only one.
Last one, yeah. Indianapolis is the weekend that Age of
Oh.
Overlord releases. So
Yep.
So that's going to be interesting. I think we have other discussions about Age of Overlord specifically later in the podcast, but I think Dortmund is going to be one of those unfortunate one-hit wonder formats that is just going to be like, I'm personally super excited about it because every time there's the YCS in Europe, it's always a banger in my opinion, but this time it's going to be the Castro Aftermath, the Fluanderies Uprising, which could also be its own thing during the tournament because it's just fresh off of a win recently, but also not a lot of actual changes. I think that if we take a step back from Age of Overlord, we're going to see a YCS where Dragon Link, people think that, oh, Magnamud is at 1 and Chaos Space is at 1. The deck is still incredibly strong. They just play 40 cards now. They don't have to play 44 or something like that. Unchained is still a deck, and with a Rizard gone, I think tier limits are actually going to be played. I think people will, they're just like, Rourke. There's a reason people love the deck so much because it's so damn fun and high rolly to play. You can get a lot of like satisfaction for playing it. And I think people are gonna want to experiment. Like, oh, we have our graveyards back. Okay, let's try it out for like one more round. And then when Age of Overlord comes out, which we'll talk about a little bit later, if nothing changes in the tier world in terms of the cards available, then Diabellstar and Horus also bring in a lot of juice to the deck. Because right now with like a Rise Hard Band, Shifter is still a problem with Flandrees. But tier can have a little bit of room to breathe,
Mhm.
especially if you can innovate and try to do something with the 3 orange lights we have now to maybe play around Shifter a little bit better and put some more fairies in your deck.
Yeah, we'll definitely have to wait and see what's going on. Tier definitely seems like a very fun option right now. There's still the thing that we talked about before, where you're either having a really bad time or a very good time with tier, and you really have to play just all the good targets. You can't really play a lot of fluff in the deck, so hand traps are kind of out of the mix. Maybe you can play like a playset of one card, probably like Ash, but that's it. And I think that tier is going to be really strong. Looking ahead to the new format, I'm very excited to be able to play Droplet again. I think that card is still absurd. Very, very good card in general. That's something that I think that even in testing right now, and I'm just like on DB Ladder, because most people on DB Ladder, even before the format's like official, I think it's official tomorrow, right?
Yes.
That people are already on the new list. Like they're not gonna be let's play retro. Like everyone's already just like one chaos base, one Magnemite. Like people just understand that, right? And so I've just been on ladder playing Droplet, and it's been crazy. And I think that's really fun too, because it gives way for a lot of new ideas and a lot of different things that you can do as well. Because a lot of people are playing like the Edge In package in Chimera to be able to at least protect their Guardian Chimera, have that effect down there. But when you go summon Guardian Chimera and your opponent imperms that and you change Droplet into a full board, oh, it's pretty crazy. So I like that a lot. But beside that, I think the new format's gonna be really cool. Little Knight is just like DP on crack. It's just like that card is so absurd, and I've already been talking to people about that. And I told Galzo too this. I was like, this card's gonna be like a $200 card. Like that card's so absurd. It's DPE no brick. And I think that's the most entertaining part for me, because like now like an IP doesn't just mean a spin, it just means like you're gonna have to deal with this other card that's very annoying, and it feels like you're playing Zeke in every deck, which is also very cool.
Yeah. I realized that when you asked for a new format, you probably meant like the ban list, but I and like myself and Eva, like because there's no more like US YCSs and like no more events anymore until like Agov comes out, we've pretty much been in post Agov since like Cancun ended and
Yeah.
like the ban list dropped. But I do want to give, since you mentioned Droplet, I think it also should be mentioned that Ultimate Slayer is another card that I'm very excited to see hopefully make a first run in the meta now that Arise Heart is gone. Like that card has been gate kept for so long between Elf providing targeting protection, followed quickly by Arise Heart releasing.
Yeah.
So it's gonna be refreshing.
That I've already heard people talking about like Not Your Servant too. Like there's so many cards that we can play now.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, we saw it already for YCS Vancouver that players were running Ultimate Slayer in their side deck because Ultimate Slayer against Unchained is quite good. If you have you can send the Evil Twin link and then shuffle back the Rage that's on their board and then just be able to send the Wave King Caesar or something else that's on their board. It's a pretty good board breaker generally. And if they want to be able to like play around that, they have to pop their own cards and stuff. It's a bit awkward for them.
Yeah, it's also like a heavy commitment. The
Mhm.
one thing that I really do like is that even if you don't want to play like the Evil Twin one, you can always play like the Paleozoic card and protect your back row. That's
That's
another
true.
one that's really cool.
There's a lot of options. There's Farigede if you just want to like mulligan. There's Blacephalon if you want to draw one, to send that and then send Garura and on the next chain. It's really nice.
Yeah.
Just that fun.
Yeah, Blacephalon.
Everyone's always so mad about that card when they open the Starlight. I'm like, it's a Starlight, I guess, you know. I've still never pulled one, so all
It's
good.
technically a variant of Shurag, and everybody loves Shurag. So
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a one card gimmick puppet lock.
Good old Trimera coming into fruition. That's exciting too. Beast Arc Ruler is gonna be a crazy card. I'm very excited for that.
Whew.
So, talking about blind second strategies, do we think that these are going to return? I've already heard a lot of people talking about this. I personally already been thinking about doing something like this. There's just I feel like the boards aren't super crazy again. So this is a point where like if you're already maining like Droll, and then I think Droll's gonna be really popular again just because of Fluenderies. But then you have cards like Evenly and Regeki just to like wipe a board real quick. I think that we could start seeing a lot of blind second decks again.
Yeah, I think this is something that like is definitely swings on a bit of a pendulum where like um generally speaking like going second strategies are or like blind going second strategies are excellent when the quality of the board breakers is better than the quality of the boards that the meta is making. Um, but there are ways for meta decks to counteract that. So, for example, you can put less of your own resources on the board in favor of playing more hand traps, or you can side floodgates. Like, for example, Anti-Spell is a card that shuts down a lot of blind second strategies by itself, and that card was not hit on the ban list. Could we see a return of blind second strategies? Maybe, but I am always very skeptical of how much success strategies like this can have because generally they're kind of easy to build against and they're very easy to plan against once you know that they're coming. So, if you're playing a deck that is dedicated blind second and you are attending the top cut of a tournament, everyone already knows that you're playing a blind second deck. And typically, blind second decks are decks that rely exclusively on cards that are powerful going second, and not cards that are, what I like to call turn neutral, which is cards that are good going first or second. So, it'd be cool to see. I'd be interested to see if anything happens like that. We've seen like some like blind second sprite list do well at tournaments, blind second Drytron list do well at tournaments, and lists like that obviously only get better with a Rise gone. So
Interesting that you're bringing this up. I'm not like now that we have you talked about the quality of board breakers. We kind of got Droplet and Ultimate Slayer back. Ultimate Slayer, I think, is unfortunately, I'm not so sure that it's ever going to rise up to what it was intended to do. Even in the OCG, I think it's like just like has a lot of extra baggage attached to it all the time. You need to play like a certain um, to an extra deck to fit in all the targets. But I also think that it could definitely be just like in terms of a super open format with like no big bad one deck to rule them all. Now it's like completely open. You can try out different strategies. And I was also testing Chimera, going second Chimera a little bit because of the fact that you can get to the Illusion Beast that just attacks 4 freaking times with 3,100 attack. Play some kaijus, play like the most amount of illusions that you can. It's going to be really interesting to see. I think that specifically if Unchained is still at the top for like the one event that we have, or Pearly is like, do I really want to let Pearly play first unless I have like Kaijus and Lightning Storms in my deck? Unchained isn't really sensitive to board breakers usually, just because they have so much recursion and background stuff. So yeah, definitely interesting to see.
Yeah, I think like Rourke brought up the idea of like the pendulum and stuff, and I think that's part of it is that if we go to these sort of at the current moment, I think there is definitely some viability to blind second strategies because of how this meta has evolved into this more board breaker, like board breaker, and really, I guess more so an engine format than necessarily a board breaker one. But if like if people take advantage of that, we could see decks like Mnadium really come into the forefront. We could see decks doing the Calamity Lock stuff. I know that it was a small thing, but I know that Leo Martinez just won like an OTS championship with Adventure Synchron, which is like it's not the biggest tournament ever, but it is notable that this is starting to happen. This format almost feels fragile in a way. in a way that it doesn't feel completely set in stone and that it could kind of change on a dime, like we saw a few weeks ago when all of a sudden Unchained, there was enough discovery with it for it to become the best deck.
And then we all found Druid Worm.
But even then, there's, I know Pack and Jesse put out videos of like how to play around Druid, and some players might adapt to that.
Yeah.
Not every hand can do it, but it's still like there's still some adaptation that can be found.
Yeah, I feel like there always really is. That's why we're talking about like dodging board breakers with Unchained, because you just activate it evenly and they just chain escape. Yep. And then they're just going. So super fun. I think blind second's a lot of fun. Obviously, I'm a striker player at heart. So there's always a part of me that's like, we could play this deck as going second, you know? But it is very fun. But I do think like even the Chimera going second build I've thought about a lot, because you can main deck Nib and just like normal summon a Berfomet and just play through with Desires. So there's like a lot of different things that you could do that definitely seem very interesting. And I really don't think that anyone's expecting someone to just be like, you start, you know, just that's the one thing I've always felt comfortable with when I did decide to go second. Like the regional I just went to, I lost 6 out of 8 die rolls. And it's amazing when you lose those die rolls and you're like, bet I'll go second, no problem.
They don't know. That's what Eva said scares me. I was like, in my head, I was like, wait, shit, am I playing strikers in the OTS next weekend? I'm like, wait.
I've thought about it.
Because it's always calling me back. It's so much fun. And like to engage, I have to give this deck some respect. But then it was a little bit scary that like after round 1, if God forbid I win the die roll, then it's like, oh no, he's on strikers.
Galzo, say swear right now about this regional coming up in striker. Like, don't tempt me, bro. Like, I will do it.
Listen, I got my mat. I'm enjoying myself right now. I'm cruising. 2 OTSs in a regional. I'm playing whatever.
Yeah, I do need my mat still. I have lost out of my opportunity twice already, going X2 twice in a row, and I'm like, this needs to stop. So
yeah, maybe you need strikers.
Oh, you know, back to being a one trick. Super fun. But we'll keep it rolling, you know, maybe we pull up with a striker and see what we can do. The deck is still so much fun. Anchor is it's a house. The new power ceiling of AGOV, though, very, very fun. We talked a little bit about Little Knight and a lot of the cards that are coming. I think that's very interesting that we are getting cards like Diabell Star that allow you to put up a negation before you start playing the game. I think it's very interesting as well that we're getting the Horus cards with tier cards, so you have a lot more ways to play through. But even some of like the smaller hitting cards in the set are still going to be really impactful. So I think AGOV in general is definitely going to be like a whole meta warping experience, because there's a lot of things to keep track of. A lot of decks are going to pop up. So what do you think is going to be some of the most popular options, and what are you most excited for?
I think that every deck is going to play Little Knight.
Yeah.
Every single deck is going to play Little Knight.
Not
sometimes at multiple copies. And I'm very excited for this card, because this card is powerful, and it is the poster child of power creep, and I love power creep. I think it was one of our previous topics, actually, in an older podcast.
You need the t-shirt.
Power creep, get the one.
I heart power creep. That's it.
I love power creep.
I'm gonna sell that, make a lot of money.
It's so much fun. It's so much fun. But it does introduce a lot of cool new things to the game, right? Like, you know, I think we alluded a little bit earlier to like how IP is more powerful now. That's true, but you don't have to make this card with IP.
True.
Like, this is not just a going first card that you like supplement your M board with an IP and then use a spent negate to make into Little Knight. Sure, that's one way you can do it. This card is also a board breaker. This card does not have to be made with IP. It could be made with any monster, and it does not have to rely on the first effect that requires it to have been made with a link monster to get maximum value out of it. The second effect is still live. The first effect, where you have to use a link monster, it doesn't have to be IP. You could use a Relinquished Anima or a Linkuriboh or any Link 1 or any Link 2 or whatever. So you can turn your bodies that have already been used to generate advantage into then further interruptions. Moreover, and you know, it kind of like changes some of the ways that we start to break boards, because one of the cool things that I've noticed in testing is like, I really like Underworld Goddess now, because every board is ending on a Link 2. And when every board ends on a Link 2, you could just have 3 bodies of yours, and if you're afraid to walk into that Little Knight, you can link it away. link it away with 3 of your bodies for a goddess, which feels very reminiscent to like back during Sprite format when we could link away a Sprite elf and like 3 dangers for an underworld goddess. So I really like Little Knight. I don't know. I think she's super cute. I think she's super powerful, and I think it's gonna like warp end boards. And it doesn't sound like she's. It's another card like Orias that doesn't read that powerful sometimes. Like you're like, well, it's just like a banish. Like I can play through a banish, right? It's like, yeah, but oh man, like a banish in like response to anything that you activate, it when you're playing against this card on your opponent's field, it's like you're navigating a minefield. And I like that. I really like that.
Yeah, and something else with it is that it also helps just like targeting, like it helps you with dodging effects. Like I know that Rescue Ace players are making this before they try to resolve Turbulence. So then, you go Chainlink 1 Turbulence effect, they go Chainlink 2 Imperm, you go Chainlink 3 Little Knight, Turbulence leaves the field along with Little Knight, and then you're good to go. Set 4, baby. And like there's a lot of interesting things you can do with this card. It's very flexible. And I think it is going to be basically played in every deck, as Rourke said. There's a lot of stuff like the Horus engine is a very interesting engine that's played in many different decks in the OCG. There's been Therians, there's been Punk. They're currently playing with Centurion, which seems to be the best build of it because the Centurion engine is so small. These cards they're huge. They provide some recursion in some instances. Sometimes you just make a Coach King Giant Trainer and call it a damn day with it. Like there's a lot of things that you can do with these cards. And selfishly, as somebody who's been playing a lot of Infernoble lately, Little Knight's been something that's been great for the deck because she's a warrior. What do you know?
Yeah,
and
don't forget
also,
those link arrows.
I know, but it probably means that we don't have to play Ferocious Flame Swordsman anymore. It depends, really. There's also the card Angel Ring that comes out, which is an equipped spell that is a time card. It can prevent your monster from being targeted, and it also negates a spell card on resolution. So it negates cards like Dark Ruler and Super Poly, which is very strange. But it's a very powerful card, and you can even set up a lock with this card and Great Shogun Shien, who is for some reason a fire warrior. Or if you have that on the field and the Angel Ring, then your opponent just activates one spell card, it gets negated by Angel Ring, and then they have no more spell or trap activation so long as the Shien is on the field. So there's a lot of just like small support to different decks that comes out in this set, along with these very powerful engines that I think is going to have a little bit of something for everyone.
Yeah, it's such a cool set in a sense that it doesn't really have a start of a deck in it. It's all like either just like one card staples like Little Knight, like Doomsday Star, or just the beginning of something like Horus, which we saw is getting a little bit more support in Phantom Nightmare. So they're continuing the support for it. But still, it's not a deck. It's like 6 cards at the moment. So you don't really make a deck out of that. I think there's 2 things that I'm super excited about. I think the new Baphomet Fusion, the new Illusion support, is such a good boost. Like it doesn't really need it because it's very very strong in my opinion. I know Gary thinks the same way.
Oh yeah.
I do. Maybe not after. No, not maybe after the last event, but still, like it could. It has such high potential, and I think investing in investing in that archetype, I think, is very smart because it's only the beginning of illusion support. We're seeing Chimera, and we're seeing just like the tip of the iceberg. Now, like Baphomet, second wave of support. This card's insane. Sends every fiend, beast, or illusion to the graveyard from the deck on summon. It's also named Chimera, and we're also seeing things like new, like smaller illusion support cards, like the monsters. And in the next maze, we have the quick play for illusions. So it's a new type. There has to be like a lot of support coming for it. So I think that card is super exciting, and I think the obviously Horus, Little Knight, Doomsday Star, all just incredible staples. I think the Diabellstar engine is something that I think a lot of people are going to be disappointed in. I personally think that it's not gonna see as much impact as it did. It's still gonna be good. So for you who are listening or watching who don't really know or understand what it does, essentially there's two routes. You summon the Dark Witch, and then you either go for a route that searches a level 1 fire monster, which is especially good if you're going for Hydrant or Jet Synchron. But now you kind of don't really have like a one card level 8 synchro because there's not really any card like that in the game anymore, except for like Diabolantis, which is not good. Or you go in the defensive route with the quick play that pops everything your opponent controls with the 2500 attack or less, which is like a massive pop. It's an interruption. So I think again, we're looking at the OCG right now, or at least up until now. This card is in every deck. And the reason is you're either playing Rescue Ace or you're going for Chaos Ruler. And Rescue Ace might be a very good, like now with Little Knight and Diabellstar, Rescue Ace is going to be really good, right? Untouched, all the cards, really powerful deck. Just needs that oomph, right? Dodge with Little Knight, more consistency with Diabellstar. But other than that, I'm kind of afraid. I'm really hoping that I'm wrong because it's so based. Like I'm gonna buy that card, every single copy of everything. Like people are saying that's the next theme of the game. That's the next like Albaz Visas. That's gonna be it. It's a good investment either way. But we're all extremely hyped. But we should remember that not everything translates 1-to-1 from the OCG.
I know that we're getting like the horse cards, but you can still go like Witch into Diablantis, dump Gokapol, search Mothman,
Yep.
play a couple dangers, and overlay into Vampire. Like a quick
yeah.
route to it. So there's
Mill your opponent's Shiren. Your opponent starts playing Mills 5, makes a window on your turn. No.
I mean, I'm down for some casino. You know, let's get it twisted.
Yeah.
Let's go.
Yeah, I mean, I'm down. I think the Horus with like rank 8s, very pog. Very, very pog.
So the other thing too, just kind of lean off what you're saying about Phantom Beast Dark Ruler. I think that card's really solid for two reasons. One, we can dump a Barrier Statue and Invader of Darkness now, which is very good in multiple scenarios. It can just be an FTK, especially because I think we're going to see a lot of Runic next format. The other thing is that Dark Ruler doesn't just change the deck for what it does, it changes the deck for how to summon it. Because now, like, if you open up Baphomet and Sword Knight, you can just fusion both out of your hand and just resummon the Sword Knight out of graveyard. You don't even have to normal summon. If you summon out like your Baphomet and you don't have a Gazelle in hand, but you have a Knight, now you can dodge Imperm. Like, there's so many things that just allows you to dodge for no reason. So I think that card's just so good just as the generic target that it is. So in general, that card's going to change the deck immensely. And now you can at least recur your cards from Banish, which people love hitting your Baphomet and your Sword Knights with Bestials. Now if you have Dark Ruler engraved, it's just free follow-up. Because they banish it and you just resummon it. So like, that card's cracked. It's really good. So I'm very excited for that. I think it's really going to elevate the deck. Just in one card, it's really solid.
The fact that it's fusion materials, which I didn't mention, the fusion materials are one beast, fiend, illusion, like one of each, like two, one of either type. So the fact that you can actually fuse illusions now is just incredible because like you said, you don't have to give up your normal summon anymore, which opens up some room. And of course, you can send Protector of the Sanctuary to the graveyard. Activate Disturbance strategy, summon it back, shuffle all of your opponent's cards from their hand to the deck, and they cannot draw any more cards. Pass it back to you, Gary.
Yeah.
I didn't say anything.
What?
You know, there's a lot of very fun things that we can do with Illusion. And I know a lot of people are kind of doubting the power of Illusion over just playing pure branded, but like, let me tell you, when you can look at your branded deck and realize there's now 15 flex spots on it, that's pretty cool. So I still think that's really solid. I've been playing a lot of Sanctifier too. A lot of people should get on that. That's really solid. Just in that deck, that card's so crazy. Like, I still will never forget giving my opponent a Veiler when they try to evenly me. I was like, that was fantastic. It's my first time ever using Sanctifier, and I was like, here you go. It was round 1 of the tournament. I was like, this card stays forever. Before we switch to the next slide, is there a single deck in the game of Yu-Gi-Oh that you've not played in years that you really want to play?
Like one that's getting support or something? Or
No,
like in
just
general?
one that you just have a hankering. You just want to play that deck. Because for me, I told myself I've owned this deck 4 times. And it was the first format I ever played in. And it was one that I really wanted to buy recently. Because I'm not going to lie to you, I really want to summon Neptumus. I just want to summon Neptumus. Like that, I don't know why. Like, I want to find a way to make it work. Like, that deck is soul based.
Started playing that long ago to have that type of deck. I was really hoping I could play Altergeists again. I could probably, if I put up a mirror on the wall, then I can start playing a little bit. I'm a boomer physically, but I'm very young in Yu-Gi-Oh, so I don't really have that kind of deck.
Yeah, just for clarification too, I started off in Abyss Rising format, not Bosch, but like still, Bosch was extremely cool. I love that set.
Yeah, I'm also like, man, I wish Altergeist was good, and I wish it like didn't just lose to Imperm on Marionette. But I guess like though like a deck that I always find myself coming back to, but not like usually taking seriously competitively, is Melfi. Like I really like the Melfi cards. I played it at locals a couple of times. I played Melfi Tri Brigade. I played basically pure Melfi. I played Melfi Sprite, and not just like the small package Melfi Sprite. We're talking like 3 Wally, like we're talking big Melfi package. And it's just a card it's a deck that I really enjoy, but its interactions are so telegraphed. But Obedience Schooled is like my favorite spell card in the game that's not called Small World. I think it's just so funny and it does so much. But
That's
yeah,
your favorite spell card in the game?
Besides Small World, Obedience Schooled is my favorite spell card in the game.
Small World is your favorite spell card in Yu-Gi-Oh.
Where's
Yes.
Engage at?
Nowhere.
It's a 2.
People are so biased.
What?
Galzo's like, how is it not branded Fusion?
No, Small World. I mean, even for me, it's probably not branded Fusion. I gotta say.
Small World is like, because Small World's a deck builder's dream. Like there's so much stuff that you can do
It's a
with
very
it.
cool
It's
card.
such a versatile card. I adore it.
It was surprising though. I got kudos. It's like a good, cool pick.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar boat where a lot of like I only really started playing paper during Burst of Destiny format, so it's like it hasn't been that long since I played like my first deck. You know what I mean?
Fair.
But so instead of that, I will say that there is one deck that I have never played before that I am very interested in playing because it just got some like new support announced, and I think it looks pretty cool, and it's gonna surprise a lot of people that know me, especially like my viewers. But I am very interested in potentially sometime in the future playing Magispector.
So that deck is very base.
Really?
I actually love that deck. Like, I really do. My friend was at a regional back when Magispector was a deck, and they were playing BA. His friend walked up to him, and he's like, how do we beat Kieran on BA? And my friend put his hand on his shoulder, and it was like, we just lose. And it was so funny.
I just think the cards look cool. They're pendulum cards, so I haven't actually read them yet. But from what I've heard or from what I've seen, they only have one text box, right? Some of them don't have they only have one effect. So I think that makes them a lot more digestible, you know.
What people don't know is that the other box is for your opponent to read while you're comboing, so they have something to do. But it's funny, actually, we didn't talk about it, that Kieran wasn't released in the OCG. It was not unbanned, which was, I think, very surprising. I think there's going to be some people here watching this who picked up a playset of Kieran and are now like, oh, wait, shit, is it not coming back now? But your Banbukus were expensive, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It did not come back, which is good. I don't think that card is extremely powerful in today's standards, and I think the Link 2 is fine. It's like broken, but it locks you. But who knows? Maybe like the TCG has been kind of doing the opposite of the TCG of the OCD every single ban list. So like they ban Fenrir, we leave Fenrir 3. It's like always the opposite. So maybe they try to get it twisted here. Who knows?
Yeah. Yeah, no, that was actually a really good point. I had not thought about that. Kieran did not come back. Now, with Kieran, the new card that like does something with level 6 spellcasters or wind spellcasters, it does say level 6 or lower. So I don't know where like the idea was like, well, there's only like 2 targets. Like, no, there isn't 2 targets. There's any like level 1 through 5 monster is also a target. Obviously Kieran is like the biggest one.
It's just all the Magic Specters.
Right, it's all the Magic Specters.
Yeah.
Kieran is a card that I, as like a fairly new player, read right now, and I always have to ask my friends who have played the game longer than I have, like, why is this card banned? I don't understand it. It doesn't sound that good. Like, there's a lot of cards like that where I read them, like, you read them and like from a future lens, and you're just like, I don't really understand why this is banned. I feel like this is worse than what I have right now. Kieran is an example of one of them. Ib the World Chalice Justicar.
Oh, that card's broken. That card was legal for like 2 weekends.
I'm like, why is this banned?
Dude,
It doesn't sound that good.
that card is
I never played it, so I don't know, you know?
Yeah, it's kind of hard out of context. I think Kieran, though, I think when it comes to Kieran, and I think there's always this let's unban everything and see what happens experiment. I think realistically, I don't think there's anybody who's going to disagree with me. Maybe there is, hopefully, but Kieran can definitely come back in today's Yu-Gi-Oh! It doesn't matter at all. And if you summon it in the new Magic Specters, then good for you. You're locked into Magic Specters, and I'm gonna OTK with Zeus or something that didn't exist back then.
I think it is very, very funny to me that there are literally 2 of those Magic Spectre cards that are coming out have Kieran on the artwork.
Yup.
And he's still wasn't released.
And that's the only Kieran you're gonna get.
True. We already kind of talked about the new AGOV meta, but I do want to go to our last point here and talking about, is Yu-Gi-Oh! In a healthy spot? And I'll start this one off. I know me and Galzo talked about this a little bit too. And surprisingly, the list was pretty bad. We didn't really get a lot of things that we wanted. Some cards are still legal. Arise got banned. Fluandereeze is Fluandering, you know. But other than that, kind of in a good spot. And I don't really mind the meta. I just played in a regional. I didn't think anything was too crazy. Just playing right now feels pretty good. I know we're about to get it twisted here in a couple weeks. But as of right now, I think we're in a pretty good spot, and I don't say that very often.
It's gonna be hard to really tell what's actually going on before Age of Overlord. I think they should have went in harder before Age of Overlord, specifically because it's gonna warp the game like a lot. Probably it's gonna have a big impact on it, and it's just gonna be. I think Konami's job, besides, of course, their main goal is to sell products in their eyes, right? But I think it's also a part of their job as a duelist, coming from me, is to keep the game at a sort of like a narrow meta as much as they can. I don't personally like going to tournaments, and like now, if you're going to a tournament in Dortmund, good luck with your side deck, because it's going to be very, very hard. I participated in a regional last week. It was like, I have to make concessions here. I don't have room for everything, and anything could pop up because they left a lot of decks untouched.
True.
Besides that, I think that's a problem, because they should have hit a lot more. And that's like besides the point. Dimension Shifter still being legal is probably a statement at this point. It could get banned in the next list, but this was a statement from Konami of like, we don't think this card is a problem. Prosperity is probably the best card in Yu-Gi-Oh! At the moment, which is at 3. It's absurd to me that the card is a 3. It's unreasonable. And recently I've started feeling that now with such a high interactivity format as we have today, Triple Tactics Talent is just an absurd card that I hate so much. I love playing it. I love resolving it because I win the game every time I do. But I posted this on Twitter. It was very popular, and I'm going to say it here as my last sentence on the subject. I don't need to be afraid to dare to try or to interrupt your combo with a hand trap just for you to go full combo, rip a card out of my hand, and just win the game on the spot, as if going second isn't impossible anyway. It's anyway you're already losing. You can just open up the hand, compare hands. This counters this counters this. You lose on the spot. So is Yu-Gi-Oh at a healthy spot? Maybe there's a wide variety of decks. But some cards, man, are just what the hell. Like every game is won by non-engine today, and that's not a healthy spot in my opinion.
God, I've been saying this for so long. I've been saying that for a year. Since Ishizu came out, since Mama, I used to play all the time. I loved that deck so much, and I hated freaking Triple Tactics Talents. Okay? You have no idea how much I hate that card. It is very fair when your opponent uses it and they're going second. You know, like if you got a chance to build your board and they're like, okay, well, you are interacting with me. I'm going to activate triple tack to like get a +1 or something like that. It's like, okay, fair enough. That's fine. Okay, I get that. That's okay. Thrust is similar to that. Thrust is kind of like that because of the stipulation, though not completely true. But it is so dumb that I can like have a game with a friend and say and like pretty much like tell them like, hey, if you have talents, we could just go to the next game. Like it's just that simple. Because like
it should have had the same stipulation as Thrust.
You know, you know what stipulation I want them to start exploring? I don't know if Yu-Gi-Oh in the past has done this because I'm not too familiar with the history of Yu-Gi-Oh, but I would love to start seeing cards, and like this kind of goes back to our blind second approach, our blind second topic. I would love to start seeing cards that say this card cannot be activated during the first turn of a duel. Like yeah. I just like using talents on turn 1 is the most unfair thing in Yu-Gi-Oh. I'd rather get hit by Shifter. I'd rather my opponent make a Rise Heart than look at my hand and do it and then do it anyway.
It does get absurd when you realize that they like errated the ever living hell out of Mind Crush and Lullaby of Obedience just because it's not even errated, but like changed an entire rule of the game because like they didn't want you getting private information, and then they just made talent, and then we're just like, okay, like Mind Crush is one of my favorite cards in the game. I love Mind Crush, but like even that's more fair than talent. And then they're just like, nah, we got to change the entire rule because we don't want you to have that kind of knowledge. Like that's insane to me.
And
yeah,
a pointer is more fair than talent.
Yes. I think so. Like so, and you know, to go to the like the first thing you were saying, Galzo, is like I don't think you should ever be punished for hand trapping your opponent. Like, I don't think we should have cards like Called By, like Cross Out, or like Talents in the game. Because I don't think there should ever be a punishment to hand trapping your opponent. Like, the way that a deck should play through a hand trap is its own engine should allow you to extend past the interruptions that your opponent used against you. You should not have to, or your opponent should not get punished because you drew a non-searchable, a non-engine card that is like hyper strong in this situation. You know, like if I ash you and you called by it, thanks, I got outskilled.
But it's a never-ending circle where people are going to tell you in the comments now, okay, so I can droll you and get away scot-free, right? And I can nib your entire board. Your turn is done. You're just like passing, and you can't even punish me. I agree with you 1,000%, but it's an inherent design flaw in the game where decks are too strong going first. Like going first is 90% of the work, right? Hand traps are strong, so it's like that's already imbalanced, and then you need to counter that. So you need to have things like cross out, because otherwise Branded will lose half the games to one card. Because that card is very strong and that card is very strong, so you need that very strong card. It's just flawed. the game is flawed. And if you keep things like Droll and Shifter, which are probably the two main ones, I think Nibiru is fine. You can play around Nibiru. You get rid of Shifter and Droll, you eliminate two lingering floodgates that are very, very strong. You don't need as much of the counters to the counters anymore. And then you start balancing the game out. But now it's like, well, I mean, I have to play this.
Yeah. I will say though, I don't like ending on a negative note. And for that regard, I would like to punctuate my statement and saying that I actually do think that even though I have my issues with the ban list, it's more of just not enough as opposed to what's there. I like what's there. I just don't think it's enough. But ultimately, I do think that the game is healthier on September 25th than it was on September 24th. Because I think that now, and I say this as someone who is not a fan of variety. I'm not a fan of diverse formats, but I do think that the variety and the diversity in Yu-Gi-Oh actually becomes a real thing starting tomorrow. Whereas, right now, people say that the format is diverse. I don't think the format is diverse at all. And I think there's very clear best decks, and if you want to win, you play those 2 to 3 decks, and that's it. And sure, the outliers can find their way into top tables, but generally speaking, there really is it's an illusion of diversity. Whereas starting tomorrow, we kind of with a Rise Hard gone, you kind of actually do start to get some diversity, and that's for those people that like those sorts of metagames, they are good. I think dealing with a Rise Hard was ultimately, I guess it is a fairly good change. So I do think that Yu-Gi-Oh is in a healthy spot, relatively to in some past formats that it's been. I just think that we should always be looking it doesn't there's nothing wrong with being critical for a game that you love, and you should be able to say well, I like this, but I think that this should be different. And oftentimes, especially us as creators, we get a lot of pushback when we say things like that, because it's we're being negative. But no, we're not. It's just when you truly love a game, you are able to see its merits and its flaws. So right now there's a lot to be happy for, and there's some things to be unhappy for. And I think but overall, I would say it's doing well.
I think there are a couple, as there are with any list, there are a couple cards that just weren't addressed. There was Shifter, there was Anti-Spell, which I think that card as the game continues to evolve and revolve around power spells going second, I think Anti-Spell continues to be a problem that we see, because because it shuts down cards like Ultimate Slayer, shuts down Thrust, shuts down your consistency stuff, because there are a lot of times where I get Anti-Spelled going second and I don't even have board breakers. I'm just trying to play through with my actual engine, because the engine I'm playing might be strong enough to break that board, but then I can't activate my field spell, and I'm that sucks. That's deeply unfortunate. And so I think the game is in a relatively good spot. I do think that the banning of Arise Heart was a good move, both from the play standpoint and also from the competitive standpoint, because Diabellstar needs to send a card to the graveyard to special summon. The Horus cards under Arise Heart, what do you do? You're not going to be able to, cards like Little Knight and Tifon still would have sold well from the set, but your two kind of flagship engines that you want to see people buy and play with, Dua Mutef is the promo card for the sneak peeks. If Arise Heart was still in the game, I think people would still be flocking to Kashtira, and that wouldn't have been good from a business standpoint. So at the end of it, there are some cards that I'm upset to see still in the game, but I'm also really excited to keep playing Yu-Gi-Oh! At the end of the day, that's the thing. I'm still here. I'm still down as hell to play a game of Yu-Gi-Oh! Whenever.
Well, I appreciate everyone joining me today. There's definitely a lot to talk about in Yu-Gi-Oh! Whenever there is a new ban list or a new meta warping set, there's always much to be said. So definitely let us know down in the comments below if you have anything that you would like to add or anything that you'd like to touch on. I'm sure that we'll all be probably looking at the comments and just trying to answer as much as we can for that too. We all appreciate you being here, and I also appreciate all of you for joining me today. You know, this is the podcast crew. This is where I like to have the conversations. It's very fun. I do enjoy this. And then if you want to check out any of our social media, I'll leave it all down in the description below. So definitely go ahead and check out everyone's channels. And then also, if you want to go check out my Instagram, Twitch, Twitter, Discord, or my Medify page, definitely go ahead and do so. And we'll catch you all in the next podcast episode. Thank you all so much.